Kia ora, Millie. Welcome to the show.
Kia ora, thanks for having me on.
Pleasure to have you here. And for those who aren't familiar with you or your work, do you mind just introducing yourself?
Sure thing. I'm Milli Kumar. I'm the co-founder and CEO at EatKinda. We're the creators behind the world first cauliflower-based ice cream.
Epic. I think I actually tried your ice cream and we got a sample here on the table today. So we into some live taste testing, which I'm absolutely fizzed about. But I think I first tasted this at Field Days last year. I think it was like a stand with Massey University. And everybody throughout Field Days, there was so many people, there's like 50,000 people go through that. And everyone was talking about your ice cream. And first I just thought people were having regular ice cream. I was like, okay, that's cool. That's nice, giving away freebies. And then people were like, you got to try this. This is actually like the core ingredient is cauliflower. So yeah, I'm really keen to get into that. But what makes cauliflower such a profound ingredient when it comes to ice cream?
Yeah, that Field Days was actually a really good chance. It was the first time we were sharing it with the masses and we got incredible feedback. I guess the highlight was, getting some of the farmers to try it. They were a little bit like anti at first. And
Totally.
they tried and they were like, oh, it's not that bad. So it was really, really good. Yeah, so cauliflower, it's a great ingredient. For many reasons. Number one, it's quite a light color, so we can manipulate it like we want in different flavors. It's easy to work with. We think one of the reasons it's so good in the ice cream is because of the fiber content. So just to clarify, there's no dairy in the ice cream. So it is dairy free. And so cauliflower is essentially helping with that creamy texture that dairy would provide. So yeah, the fiber plays a really good role in that.
That's insane. And you mentioned in your introduction that this is a world first. Are you guys the only people in the world that is making cauliflower ice cream? Because it's very niche.
Commercially, yeah.
Wow.
And we've done our research. We have not been able to find anyone else that's commercially selling it around the world.
That's incredible. And how does cauliflower ice cream stack up to traditional ice cream? I'm sure you probably, in effect to all of this, you've become quite knowledgeable about ice cream.
I'll leave that to you, Noel. I think you should try and let me know what you think.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll get into that soon. But I'm also really keen just to understand your story as well. Like you studied at Massey University, but I'm really keen to get an understanding from growing up. Who is Millie, and what were some of those key moments that shaped you to now become an entrepreneur owning a cauliflower ice cream company?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So I'm from Wellington. I grew up in Berhampore, went to Berhampore School. So even if I go before that, my parents, I'm first generation Kiwi. My parents migrated, I'm assuming like 30 years ago. My dad came and worked in one of the first Indian restaurants in Wellington.
Wow.
So when like the Indian food wave was coming in, and then he went on to have his own restaurant. So I literally grew up in Arlen Bay in the takeaway, like colouring in while my parents used to, make kebabs and curries. So I guess I saw entrepreneurship and food growing up, and I saw that, and I think that's what's a big part of who I am today and really inspired me to be creative with food as well.
Were they happy memories when you look back on them, or were they also, because I know what Hosmo's like, it's stressful. My mum had a stint owning a cafe in Te Tahi Bay, so very similar to you. When I was 8 years old, I was just spending most of my days there.
Yeah.
When you reflect back on those memories of your dad working at this takeaway restaurant, what sort of feelings do you get from them?
Yeah, I was really young. I was like 2 or 3 years old. And then I remember like mum used to, in breaks take me to the library and we'd bike around. I think it was good. I was happy. I remember all the customers used to keep me entertained. They used to come and hang out with me.
That's cool.
And used to call me a chatterbox. So no, I remember it was quite a good time.
Yeah. And you went to Wellington High School. So what made your decision to go study at Massey University with the degree that what was it, food science?
Yeah, so I actually wanted to be a baker. So I remember in the kitchen I used to do a lot of creative stuff trying to make eggless cakes and doing a lot of innovation there. And that's why I wanted to do hospitality at high school. Then I got introduced to food technology at Wellington High, and my teachers were really, really good. And I did like a crest competition, and I understood actually I like the creative element of the baking. And that's what led me to do food tech at Massey.
For people who aren't familiar with food tech, what is food technology?
Yeah, so, all their products in the supermarket, from baked beans to, milk to bread, there's food technologists that are developing it in like your kitchen lab, and then they're commercializing it. So they're taking like a formulation, a recipe, and scaling it up so that people around the world can eat it. And with food, you've got to make sure it's safe. So that's a big part of it. You also need to make sure that all the products are the same. You don't want to buy tip top bread one day and it tastes different the next day. So
Yeah.
making sure it's consistent. So that's all part of being a food technologist. So there's parts of science and also creativity. And so that's what I really liked about it, the I guess the amalgamation of the both.
You can blend them all like in together.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And so talk to me about how you discovered your sort of journey into entrepreneurship.
I think, as I said, my dad had, run a restaurant, so it was always around me. So I guess it's just in my blood a little bit, I guess. But I also knew when I was at uni, I've always, funny thing is, I always struggled getting up in the morning.
Not a morning person?
Not a morning person. And I always struggled, and for many reasons. I think more just, being a female, there's a lot of hormonal reasons. And back then I couldn't figure that out. And so I was like, man, I could not get up and go to work 8 a.m. every day. Like I would struggle.
Yeah.
And I even saw at uni, I wouldn't go to lectures because I just struggled to get out of bed.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean like I still did well at uni. So I just worked differently. And so that was a big reason actually. Not many people know this, that I was like, I just need to do my own thing so I can do my own schedule. Funnily enough, now I'm getting up at crazy times and sleeping at crazy times. But yeah.
What's your average day looking like now in terms of waking up to, the end of the day? What does that look like?
Oh, it's so varied. Like I just moved back to Wellington in like sort of August. I've probably been less home than I've been more out traveling for work. So when I'm at Auckland making product, we're getting up 7 a.m., 6 a.m. It's awful and I hate it. So I have my matcha to keep me going.
Got to do it.
But when I'm at home, like I'm not getting out until 11 a.m.
Nice. Protect that special time, eh?
Yeah.
It's funny. Yeah, so many people. You're either like a morning person or like a night owl. Are you up late or?
I used to be a late owl. I used to like be able to like work to like 2 a.m, get all my assignments done. But now I'm like dead.
It's funny, you reach like, and we're both 25. Like you kind of reach that halfway to 50 point. And I'm the same, I'm just such a granddad now. Yeah. I'm just like, I low-key love just like being in bed at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
It's the best feeling.
Yeah.
So good. Cool. So your journey into entrepreneurship, so you've kind of realized that you want to create, I guess, your own structure and routine to work around your life. And I think for many people who are at the slave to the 9 to 5, the sort of corporate rat race, we get chucked into these binary sort of boxes, basically. You've got to be in the office from 9 to 5. I know a lot more offices and like workplaces are being a lot more flexible. But sort of further to that, what has been some of the key learnings for you so far starting out with being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I had not done a business degree getting into this. I've learned everything on the job.
Wow.
So do you want me to talk a little bit about how this started?
Totally. Go into it.
So did my food technology degree. Literally the day of finishing it, I went to a startup weekend, which is like a business pitch competition. And it was just for fun in Hawera in Taranaki. And I turned up and that's where I met my now co-founder, Jenny Matheson. And she had this idea of a cauliflower-based ice cream. She'd been vegan for about 20 years. Back then, nothing on the market. Still now,
that would have
quite
been
an early stage.
Tough, being vegan 20 years ago.
Yeah, and she lives surrounded by dairy farms.
Wow.
So she got a lot of hate, quite bluntly. She was told she was being cruel to her children, raising them vegan. So it was really important to her that she made delicious treats in her kitchen for when the friends of her kids came around from school. And that's where she created this cauliflower-based ice cream. And that was like the hit. I think she tried like lots of other veggies as well. And so she brought this recipe along and the idea, and I was like, man, this is cool. I don't want to do another techie, idea. So I joined a team and we did really well. I tried the product. I was like, man, this is cool. And then afterwards, I remember we went for some sushi and we were like, should we give this a crack? Very naively. We didn't know what was involved. And we gave it a crack. And here we are like 3 years later. And we literally learned everything, right? And something else that's quite cool is, I was 22 when I started. She was 50, going on to 50, so very different in age. And yeah, so we did like accelerator programs, a lot of research in my own time, and just making really good mentors and supervisors that sort of helped me with that.
That's incredible. Do you kind of believe in fate? Like you guys joining up at that moment?
Yeah, 100%. We're both quite spiritual in some ways, and we always talk about it. We're like, it's just meant to be, How does stuff like this happen? And we work really well together.
That's
as well.
awesome.
Yeah.
So you guys kind of formed this relationship and this alliance at this accelerator sort of weekend. At what step sort of after sushi were you like, okay, there's actually real potential here? And like, what were those sort of next steps? Because I think everybody has ideas, but actually bringing those ideas into action is a whole different story. So yeah, talk to me about like those sort of next sort of 6 to 8 months following that sushi catch up.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think back because it was like a while ago now. So while I was doing while we started doing the EatKinda thing, I'd already enrolled in a master's program at food tech, like a food tech master's program. And so I was going to do the master's and start EatKinda on the side. And then EatKinda's pace just went from, because we did a few accelerator programs. And through that accelerator program, we were held accountable. Weekly we were doing things. And both of us were passionate as well, right? And so we kept moving forward. And then there was like this pitch competition that became finalists in, and we got a little bit of fat cash to help us grow. So I think it was just the being held accountable, having that support network around us that helped us keep going. Because it was really hard. Like we didn't have any skills, we didn't have any money. And a lot of people were like, I remember a conversation I had early on, they were like, you're never going to get this in the supermarkets. There's so many products out there. So you
Is
always
that some
have
tall
that
poppy
kind of,
syndrome? Like
maybe, but I think reality is it's really hard to get in the supermarkets. And so we were like, oh yeah, we'll do this product, we'll get in the supermarkets. And people were like, oh, why don't you guys think smaller? And then I remember one of the mentors we had was like, guys, you should be thinking big. Like you can do anything. And so it was just all these different conversations we had over time that kind of like helped us create this strategy. Like if I was to think what we were thinking early on to where we are now, it's so different,
If you were to sort of like break down the process for listeners of the show who might have a business idea in mind, or they might be entrepreneurs themselves, if you were to break down like the process of launching and scaling a product into market, into like teachable, bite-sized pieces of information that you could give to other people who might be, on that journey as well, where would you break down those parts of your story, and like what sort of advice could you tangibly give to people?
Yeah, so I can give a few things. So I think number one is do your research on the problem. Like I think the reason we've been so successful so quickly is because we're actually solving a problem. It's not just another product in the market. Veganism is growing. People are wanting more plant-based foods. They're more sustainable, and we're hitting those points that consumers are demanding for. And there's nothing on the market that compares in terms of quality, right? And so that's really important. So if you've got a business idea, actually go and talk to people and ask them, what are your problems? Do you think the solution is going to solve it? If yes, why? If no, why? And keep iterating that. And we've done that throughout the process. I remember early days we went out and did all these like online surveys. We did in-person interviews with lots of different people. And we then went back to them, and then we did like blind taste testings with our product. And that's why it's, I'd say, pretty good and has that mass appeal.
Wow. And with the blind taste testing, were you putting your ice cream amongst like dairy products?
Yeah, so we did a blind taste testing with our strawberry and chocolate. We did it with our strawberry, Haagen-Dazs dairy strawberry, and then I think it was Motueka creamery. And like it was very on par. People really couldn't tell the difference, and the like scores were very similar. And I think that's where we knew we were onto something.
Wow.
Because people can't tell that difference. And that was our goal. We want to make a product that is comparable in terms of dairy. We're not competing against other vegan. We're comparing against the mainstream dairy market.
Yeah, that's massive, eh? And who are the real big players in the ice cream like market?
Yeah, so
who are your competitors?
Probably Ben and Jerry's.
Yeah,
because I'm thinking global. Like we're set to make this into a global brand.
That's awesome.
And it'll be Ben and Jerry's, right?
Yeah.
And my dream would be that Unilever, who owns Ben and Jerry's, wants to buy our company and put it out into their global network.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
And like, how big is the ice cream industry market? Like
globally,
how big is that?
Billions of dollars. It's huge.
That is huge. When it comes to like sales and stuff as well, there's a real seasonality when it comes to, I guess, ice cream sales. They must go off in summer. Has that been something strategic within the thinking of the business as well? Like, how do we sort of keep afloat on those, the winter periods where people aren't really going out and consuming ice cream as much?
Yeah, so I think we're very early stages in that process because we're just about into supermarkets. So I don't exactly know what it's going to look like. Obviously, there's going to be some seasonality differences. However, from what I've heard from people is in New Zealand, we love our ice cream.
I'm such like, I'll have a choc bar in winter, eh?
Yeah.
I'm so stoked with that.
Exactly. So I think, there might be some differences, but I reckon there should be still sales. But that it'll be interesting to see like what kind of marketing strategies do we do, or kind of different products do we launch to be able to still keep our sales going through winter. Yeah.
I'm really keen, and I'd love for you to speak to, and as much as you can share, just around like your supply chain, like from working with growers, because you've got cauliflowers, obviously, all the way into like production and then scaling, and then like working with different retailers to sell on your products. Like, what does that line sort of look like?
Yeah, so one of our main ingredients is cauliflower, and we're actually wanting to use cosmetically imperfect cauliflower. So globally, 40% of veggies never make it off the farms, and so we're trying to solve that problem. And so we're working with farmers to get the stuff that would be left unharvested or isn't pretty enough for the supermarkets. And that's honestly been quite a big challenge because their processes are set. It's really hard to come in and be like, hey, look, how do we change your processes to then use this produce. And so that's an ongoing project for me. We're slowly working through that. And also there's seasonality. So yeah, I think that's been a big challenge for us, trying to get the cauliflower cosmetically imperfect supply. However, we grow cauliflower all year round. We grow it in different regions. So supply in general hasn't been that much of an issue. And sorry, what was the rest of the question?
Just like, so you got work with the growers. Like, what does that sort of production line look like from, work with the growers, getting the cauliflower, the production at the factory, and then like obviously packaging it up and selling it?
Yeah, so we get all the raw materials in. At the moment, we're making it ourselves by hand. These are all hand filled.
Really?
Yeah, so it's a big job, long hours. Big team that does it at this place called the Food Bowl in Auckland, which is like a big sort of like a factory that anyone can come and use, by the way. It's part of the New Zealand food, I can't even remember the full form, Food Innovation Network.
Yep.
Sorry, New Zealand Food
So we have
Innovation
an acronym
Network.
for something, eh?
Yeah. And they can like just put lots of different pieces of equipment together to make your product. So we're there right now, and we're transitioning to a contract manufacturer.
True.
So hopefully we won't have to do it by hand. And the challenges in New Zealand were so small, we don't have that many places to be able to manufacture. So that's another big challenge we've had. And so then you make the product, we then package it in our tubs, and then we get put onto pallets, gets sent to like a distributor like that will store it in frozen conditions, and then distribute it out to our customers. So that's our job. And then after that, we hope for the best, really.
Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't mouse in the truck or anything.
Yeah.
Shall we crack into some? I'm really keen to try one. Oh, cool. So I've just opened the lid. So there's people watching and some people just listening. And how do you get that? Okay, nice. Are you going to have some with me?
No, you have some. I have it all the time.
Yeah, how often are you putting back
Actually, not
like ice cream?
I'm lying because we don't get all in Auckland. It's so hard to have down.
Yeah, true.
I wish we got more of our own product.
Visually, this is looking really nice. There's like a little spiral with some, what would you call that? So it's not like jelly. Swirl.
A swirl with a ripple in it.
With a ripple in it. That's way better at describing it.
So you're trying the strawberry.
The strawberry. And you did pay me to give a good review. No, I'm kidding.
I wish we're so early stage startup. I couldn't even find one or two.
It's like the texture is exactly like a standard ice cream. Well, it is to me anyway. It's actually so wild that this is made out of cauliflower.
Yeah.
It's fucking delicious.
Didn't pay him, I promise.
That is insane. And totally like gluten-free, dairy-free. Has it got much sugar?
So I would say we're on par, if not lower, than most ice creams. Compared to vegan ice creams, definitely lower. So a lot of vegan ice creams, because of their formulation, they tend to be hard in texture and icy in texture, and that's a problem we wanted to solve. And to make it softer and more scoopable, they pump it with more sugar. Because what sugar does technically is lower the freezing depression point. So it lowers the temperature where water freezes, and so you can scoop it more. And so because of our formulation and our process, we don't have to do that. So our sugar is on par for ice cream.
That's actually an incredible way. That is so crazy. And did it always, like, how much has the ingredients and the flavor changed since you guys first started?
A lot. So what Jenny made in the kitchen, like for her family, to what it is now is hugely different. And that's because what you do in the kitchen versus scaling it up and when you're making thousands and thousands of liters is so different, right? And so it's been incredible to see that change.
Yeah. And from like a food technology perspective, I guess it's kind of like the perfect match with you and your co-founder, but like what has been some of the like trickiest challenges for you to solve from like a food technology perspective on this ice cream product?
Yeah, look, we're doing a world first, right? There's no answers. I can't Google
That's
and
so
find an
epic.
answer. And so it's just been a lot of trial and error. And I think the key is having good people around you. I was very lucky that I had support from my lecturers from my food tech degree at uni who really supported me along the journey. And I had other people I could just reach out to. Yeah.
And like what sort of problems are you trying to solve from like a food technology perspective? Is it like, there must be so much science going into, we need to ensure we've got the right like texture, like it must just go on and on and on. The flavor must be so important. Like how do you solve those problems?
Again, having really good people around you and doing lots of trial and error.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest challenge is, you're literally taking a formulation you're making like maybe 2 liters in your kitchen,
Yeah.
and then you're ramping that up to thousands of liters, and there's just so much that goes into that. I can't just point out one thing. There's just so much.
Yeah, there's so much in there. I really want to just like finish all of it on this episode, but I know everyone listening will just hear like, and it won't be nice in your ears.
It's good ASMR.
Yeah, it is like ASMR. That's awesome. And you've recently got these into like the Hell's Pizza as well. That must be huge for you guys.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how that came to fruition?
So a very Kiwi story.
Yeah.
One of my really good friends works in the Cuba Street Hell Pizza.
Yeah.
And she told her manager who loved the story, told her boss. And then next thing I know, we're with samples like a year ago. So not like probably like 3 versions before this. It wasn't as good as what it is now. We turn up to their office and give them samples and they loved it. They were like, this is so good. And they just worked with us and waited until we were ready. And we're so like grateful to them, to the team, and super supportive. So March this year, we launched and we had a 6-week trial period with them.
Yeah.
And we launched our strawberry and our mint flavor.
Yeah.
We sold out in pretty much 4 weeks. And we did not we don't have money. We did not pay for any marketing. That was just them doing a bit of a brand push and organically sort of the people who'd been following our story and just it got hyped. It was on a lot of the, news channels, like The Edge posted about it, Stuff posted about it. And so now because it did so well, we have a 1-year contract with them. That's
cool. And what is the, like for that 1-year contract, does that mean that they're supplying that? It's like on their menu?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. You can go in. It's in their stores, 77 stores nationwide.
Crazy.
You can order it online. Yeah, the strawberry and the chocolate is now in their stores.
I guess from like a marketing perspective as well, like there's such a bonus for different organizations who have to sort of get with the times, understand like their economic and environmental impacts, and how they can sort of like cater like more diverse food ranges. So something like this, it's obviously got massive benefits to an organization like Hell's, where they can be like, hey, look, we're at the forefront of trialing this like cauliflower ice cream product. Like, be interested to hear your take. Like, why do you think Hell's Pizza is so invested into your ice cream?
Yeah, so the reason we wanted to work with Hell Pizza as well was because they are really good at catering to dietary requirements, gluten-free, vegan. They've got amazing selections. And so we knew that it's a good place for our early adopters to find it. And that's why we wanted to partner with them. They're also doing some really cool stuff around the environmental sustainability piece. So it was, yes, they, for them it looks good to be partnering with us, but for us, we're very choosy who we work with. And because we're so strong about our brand values. So it was a great partnership. And I think that's why it worked. Consumers are wanting to lower their environmental footprint. And so if you give them a product that tastes amazing, they're gonna make that switch.
How do you guys like protect your intellectual property, like your IP as well? Like
in terms of the product?
Yeah, because I'm sure it's kind of like we were talking earlier, like off air, but it's almost like the KFC like special formula, right?
Yeah.
Like or like the Krabby Patty formula of SpongeBob. It's like there's this really integral, amazing part of this this end result, which other people don't know. That's your competitive advantage. But yeah, like how do you like maintain the IP? Because I'm sure lots of, as this is also a world first, lots of different businesses will be like, oh, let's jump on the next thing. Oh, these guys are doing cauliflower ice cream. How can we do that? And yeah.
So we are just doing trade secret. So we just make sure we keep it very tight with the people that know and don't spread around what we're doing. You could go down the patent route, but it is more expensive. And what happens when you do a patent is it gives your formulation or your secret to the world after a certain amount of time.
What is a patent? What does that mean?
So what it means is pretty much you register your secret in a document, and then it goes through a process, it gets approved, and then you own it. So pretty much if, let's say, you came and copied me, I can be like, hey, I've got a patent on this, and I can, I guess, sue you. But that costs money. So there's a lot of reasons why sometimes going down the patent route just doesn't make sense. And for us, it just doesn't make sense for us. It makes sense just a trade secret. It'd be really strong around, doing really good NDAs, which are non-disclosure agreements. So if people are coming into our factory or we're talking to them about our product or our process, there is some sort of written record of who knows about it. So if anything does go wrong, or if anyone does try and copy, we can be like, hey man, you signed this NDA, you know? It just keeps people accountable.
Do you have like the secret formula locked in like a hidden vault somewhere under the mattress or something?
In my brain.
In your brain. Oh, that's super cool. That's amazing. And do you think there's like, is that at a stage where there's health benefits for cauliflower ice cream over ordinary dairy product ice cream?
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, people don't really eat ice cream to be healthy. And so for us, that nutritional benefit has just not been something we've even considered, right?
Yeah.
For us, it's been, how do we make a bloody good product that solves consumers' problems and makes them feel happy when they eat it, because it's ice cream. And however, the feedback I've gotten, people have told me it's lower calorie than what they're eating. They're telling me that they like the amount of sugar they like. It's not that sweet. So we're getting that consumer feedback, and that's just a bonus on top.
And within the like rapid scale and rise of EatKinda, like what have been some of those key lessons for you as you're, basically building the airplane while you're flying it, becoming like a business owner? It must just be a crazy like rapid rise, and you're just getting started. So what are some of those key sort of moments on your journey so far?
Key moments on our journey. I think you might relate to this, Noah, like, because we're both 25. I think it's interesting because we're just figuring out how to be adults, and now I'm figuring out how to be an adult and get up in the morning, and then I'm also having to like literally grow a startup. And so I think that's been a challenge, but also I'm learning a lot. Just things, how do you manage doing the dishes and then doing emails, and it's just that people sometimes think we're out doing things, going to conferences, all glamorous, but the reality is I'm still having to do the dishes and vacuum and feed myself. And I think that's been probably a learning, like, how do I manage that? And I'm still figuring it out. I don't actually have the answer to it.
That's such good insight, actually. What pushes you to keep going? What's like motivating you behind this?
Yeah, so when I started this journey, I'd been vegetarian all my life, so there was value alignment there. But once I started this journey, I came more and more in touch with what's actually going around in the food industry and the reality of the animal agricultural industry, and that was a shock. And I think knowing what I know now, it just motivates me to really want to make a change. And also for New Zealand, like, you would know New Zealand, dairy is our biggest export. As a country, if something goes wrong, and look, the reality is it is going wrong. This is probably not the place to talk about it, but it can have massive consequences for all of us who live in this country. And we're just not talking about it. We're just not trying to find solutions. And that also motivates me. If I can grow a business that is not dairy, but still in the food, and we can, leverage some of those, global supply chains we have, it will just help our country, and also show people that, hey, let's keep innovating in food. Let's not just rely on dairy and animal-based agriculture to grow our economy.
Yeah, it's so true. It's I feel like we're at like a real curve point of like just innovation with food technology. Like, there's so many like meat alternatives out there for like hamburgers, like sausages. And I remember I was up at the Auckland Food Show, I think last month or so, and walking around there and like trying all of this alternative like food technology. Like, again, if this was like a blind food test, I'd be like, that's totally like beef, but it's not. It's like it's a plant-based alternative. It's crazy. Do you think we got a long way to go to, like, I guess, pushing the psyche for more New Zealanders to actually change their behavior around how they purchase these things?
Yeah, I think so. I'm very lucky I got to go overseas this year to a different player. I was in India, I was in Singapore, I went to the States, Aussie. And so I've been able to really see what's happening in these markets in terms of the whole protein movement. And, they're way ahead of us in terms of products, brands, and the I guess the benefit they have is they've got facilities to help them scale, and they've got resource. All these startups, when I was in the States in this conference, they were talking about how they've got a billionaire supporting them. And I was like, where's my billionaire? I want a billionaire, but we just don't have billionaires in New
We've got a
Zealand.
few billionaires that listen to the show. So if
Well,
anyone wants to
come my
invest
way.
and also sponsor the podcast, please.
So, it's just a whole different world, right? And I think we just don't have those resources backing us, not early on anyway. You have to do a lot of hard grind to get to the point where people really want to back you. And so it's just hard and tiring. So yeah, I think that going overseas, it was really interesting to see where they're at. In New Zealand, believe it or not, we are very sustainability conscious, if that makes sense. We're seeing big trends, people wanting to be more flexitarian.
Yeah.
I think honestly, our products are being bought not just by vegans. I don't even know how many vegans are buying it. They're being bought by people who actually eat dairy and meat and love it because it's a really good ice cream.
Totally.
And so we as a country are very open to it. It's more the question, how do we package it up in a way that the global market wants it from us, and how do we compete on the global stage, and what kind of resources do we need to do that? And I'm having a lot of conversations with people, up there who are having these conversations, and it's coming down to scalability, funding. So it'll be really interesting next few years to see what happens.
I feel like I need to go like Silicon Valley or something and do some like Dragon Den pitches.
Yeah, I'd love to, but it's just so hard to get in, eh?
Yeah.
You go there, they're like, oh, why are you coming here? You're here. Like, why are you here? Why are you not there? It's just, it can be a bit of a challenge being a Kiwi.
Yeah. That is super interesting. And what are some of those, like you mentioned earlier, around the sort of agricultural consequences of how we've sort of positioned the food industry around dairy products? Like what, I guess for people listening, like this is such a new topic to the podcast and to me also, but like why is, well, I've got a basic understanding of why this is, but I'd love to hear your take. Like why is the current like reliance on animal products, why is that not sustainable?
Okay, so it's a huge topic. So I can probably go into a little bit into this. So, I mean, do you believe that the climate crisis is real to begin with?
Yeah,
no.
The Earth's also flat. No,
so, I mean, climate change, everything warming up is a real problem. And, methane, what cows fart out, is a big contributor to that. Really basic, right? On top of that, you're literally growing food that's feeding animals that is then going on to feed humans. That food can literally feed humans. I'm going really basic here.
This is good.
Also, in New Zealand, you talk to your parents, New Zealand lakes and rivers were swimmable everywhere. Now over 70% are polluted. And when we have kids, don't know if those would even be swimmable. And that's because of dairy farming and all the nutrient runoff going into the oceans. So there's so many, on a very basic level, reasons why it's just not good for our country. And then on top of that, there's, especially globally, there is more and more research coming around the health implications of a dairy and meat only diet. We're not having much fiber because there's so much dairy meat. So yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons, but on the core, in terms of environmental benefits, and then there's also the animal welfare side of it. Don't want to go too dark, but
go there, like seriously, because this whole thing with beyond the surface is like, we want to go beyond the surface in terms of like the conversations that we have. So yeah, like go as deep as you want to paint the picture for people who might not understand.
Yeah, it's hard to know how much you want to go, but like in the industry at the moment, if you have a boy cow, a calf, it's killed the day next day, and how that's not ethical.
It is crazy, eh? Because I used to work at WorkSafe before. I don't know if I should even say that, but and I did a lot of work in the agricultural sector around creating harm reduction programs for farmers, and I learned, I was going in there so green to understanding agriculture and the industry, but yeah, I learned some pretty harrowing things, and that's the one thing that really stood out to me, especially in the dairy industry around. Yeah, cows like Bobby's being born and they just go cull them. They just take them to the slaughter factory because it's a male cow. It can't produce milk, so therefore it's inefficient to production. It's like so crazy. I feel like so many people, and I'm a hypocrite because I also drink milk, but it's like I don't think people really understand that side of farming.
No.
No.
No, you talk to people even now, and they're like, no, that doesn't happen, Millie. It's ridiculous. I'm like, oh God. And it's just not here. Like my family's in India, and I go tell them, and they have so much dairy. And I tell them, you guys do realize what happens. They're like, no, Millie, that doesn't happen. I'm like, okay, ignorance is bliss, right?
Yeah, ignorance is bliss.
So yes, there's a lot of, it's just a lot of pain, and I think in that industry. And I mean, look, there's new technologies coming out, which will be really interesting. So I'm happy to share, globally, there's this technologies called precision fermentation, where pretty much, how we ferment beer, we'll be able to ferment milk proteins. And so there's no animals involved, but you're getting the same protein and the same product at the end of it.
Yeah.
And, you're using sugar to feed like a yeast that has the DNA to make your milk, casein, that's in milk, one of the proteins, and then you're getting that, and you can make milk out of it and cheese out of it. And there's some really cool Kiwis, actually. So there's this guy called Matt Gibson, who's the founder of New Culture, who's using this technology, making mozzarella cheese that's about to launch in the States. And he left to the States to do this because New Zealand just didn't support him. And so when these technologies come up, where does that leave New Zealand's dairy industry? And these are some of these conversations that are happening. Like New Zealand dairy is at a threat, but no one really wants to talk about it. I think they're starting to now in a very chill way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess anything political, and it's such a big challenge to solve, because New Zealand has been birthed, like the backbone, you always hear it, the backbone of the economy is the agricultural sector. And it's generations of New Zealanders who have, and like some of the farmers that I met through my old work, like some of the most hardworking and honest and like stand-up people you'll ever meet in your life. Like they do and like an incredible job with the work they do. It's fucking hard work. But to shift a whole entire industry away into something new, it's like, I wonder what sort of levers the government sort of needs to pull to enact that change.
Yeah. And look, we're in a political, very political time right now with the elections, and none of them are talking about it.
Nah.
So it's really, really interesting, eh? But hey, look, I think it's really what I think is really sad is farmers get a lot of the blame for all of this. It's not them who should be the ones solving these problems. Like they're just doing their job. It needs to be the corporates and the government, but more it needs to come from business, right? Business need to clean their own shit.
Yeah. And
so these big businesses that are the ones who are involved with animal agriculture need to be the ones finding solutions. They're the ones with the deep pockets.
Yeah.
I mean, our government doesn't have much money, let's be honest.
Yeah, not anymore. No. It's not much left.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So what, if you had like a crystal ball and you're going to make like an assumption, or you look into this crystal ball, what does the future of food technology and food production look like in New Zealand in 100 years?
Oh, that's a hard one. God, you asked me too many hard questions this morning. Sunday, I'm not awake yet.
Have some ice cream.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, it's an interesting one. There's a lot of questions coming up as like, should New Zealand just be relying on food as a whole for our, like, for main income coming into the economy? Like, I was talking to James, who's the CEO of KiwiNet, literally a few days ago, and he was talking about like, how can we create New Zealand into like a deep tech ecosystem? We've got really good tech, including food tech, but we're really changing what New Zealand actually provides to the world. Do we shift away from animal agriculture? Because we just don't, we just don't really have the resources here to keep pumping up and scaling up. Like even EatKinda, we could, even if we wanted to, we couldn't make EatKinda for the world. We just don't have the scale for it. We'll have to probably move overseas to be able to grow and scale. So there's all these questions about, what does that look like? But in terms of food specifically, I think hopefully shifting to a more sustainable system, looking into things like sustainable, like precision fermentation. There's this really cool company called Muruku, founders Amos, and they're doing this really cool thing where they've put the milk, the milk proteins or the DNA or the recipe for that into the plant, and then they just grow the plant. And so there's all these new technologies coming out, and these could actually replace your standard dairy, putting cow on the farm. Or there's a startup called Leafed in the South Island where they actually extract protein from the grass, and then that, is used to make dairy products.
Wow.
So there's all these new things, and it's like, how do we shift and get mass consumption of these new technologies and replace our standard, cows and sheep on the land with these?
Yeah.
So it'll just be interesting to see what happens. I would like more of the stuff to be taken up.
Yeah. And it sounds like we've got it all here in New Zealand already, right? It's just a matter of like identifying it and scaling it.
Yes. Yep. And just backing our Kiwi founders.
Mm. I'm keen to head into and to get your thoughts around like what are the current challenges for entrepreneurs on that startup journey trying to launch either in New Zealand or overseas? Quite a broad question, but I want to understand from you and in your experience, like what have been some of the limitations, whether you've had to deal with like tall poppy syndrome or even just the challenge of the economy of scale, not be able to maybe like produce. We don't have the facilities here in New Zealand to get that scale really, really pumping. So yeah, keen to understand like what are those challenges in New Zealand for entrepreneurs, startups? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so definitely number one would be the scalability. It has been really difficult for us. We're getting the demand from the consumers, but it's how do we grow it to meet that demand in New Zealand, but also overseas, right? Scalability. Number two, resourcing. Funding has been really difficult.
Yep.
I think for the kind of growth we've gotten, I didn't expect it to be so difficult to raise money. Also a very harsh financial climate at the moment, so I completely understand that. But like majority of our investments come from overseas.
Yeah.
New Zealanders just haven't backed. And I'm a little bit salty about that.
Yeah, that's surprising, eh?
Yeah, it's just don't, again, that's that thing. We're a country that literally, animal and food, animal agricultural food, but yet we're not investing in other forms of food. Really interesting. But anyway, so that's been a challenge. Tall poppy syndrome, 100%. Like that's a given. Like it is a problem. I think in the earlier days it was a problem, but it's not something you can. I think it's just something you learn to not dwell on. It happens. That's cool. Recognize it. Move on. I think the challenge is recognizing that's what's happening. It's not your fault, or it's not you. It's just tall poppy syndrome. And I think a lot of people I talk to as well, they'll share stories with me, and I've had to tell them, hey, like keep doing you. New Zealand's got tall poppy syndrome. That's what's happening with you. It's nothing to do with what you're doing. So just keep going forward. So yeah, but it is what it is. You move on. I think what's interesting is when I was in the States, I was at a conference. Personally, I in New Zealand would be described as very out there, a bit very confrontational, are very common words that people use to describe me.
Okay.
And I remember going to the US and I felt like I just was not confrontational enough. I was struggling to have conversations. I was struggling to even just get in there to have a yarn. I was like just a little person in the background, and it's just so interesting the difference in those cultures. So I think the challenge is I think New Zealand needs to really back their founders and grow their confidence, because the minute someone starts growing up the ladder and building that in themselves, we kind of pull them down.
Yeah, so
I
true.
think so that's been really interesting.
So true. I was having a yarn with a mate last night, and he just spent 6 months over in New York, and just talk about like the cultural components and like differences between New Zealanders and Americans. Like they're so different. Like we've got so much more in common with probably people from the UK than we do from people over in America, just around the culture and how we sort of present ourselves. And I know Americans in like the US gets a lot of slack about a whole range of horrible social issues, presidents, you name it. Got a pretty bad track record, but I think something they do really well, again, I'm saying do, something they do really well is they do celebrate success. And that's something which I don't think we've really got a grasp on in New Zealand yet, is like what you said, uplifting more Kiwi founders, entrepreneurs and creatives. Because in the US, like they're proud to talk about their achievements. They'll grab a megaphone and scream it at the top of their lungs, and it's like encouraged and celebrated. But over here, I remember even growing up in primary school, if someone was good at something, you call them a tryhard.
Yeah.
Remember that saying? It's like you're good at sport or
teacher's pet.
Yeah, or teacher's pet. Like you're actually doing something good. You're talented. You're like performing, and you're just labeled a tryhard or a teacher's pet. It's so backwards.
Yeah. So I think, believe it or not, the peak of the tall poppy syndrome stuff that I faced would have been at uni. And the minute I left uni, and it was really hard for me at uni. And I was really lucky to have some lecturers that kind of supported me and just said, hey, Milli, just Don't change who you are. Like when you go into the real world, this is all going to be what makes you you. And I was very lucky to have that. If I wouldn't have had that, I probably would have not be who I am right now. Like I would have gone down a whole different path and probably lost a lot of self-confidence because I was just going down this dark hole.
Yeah.
And then luckily I had those people that put me out. And then, you know, literally the day I finished my degree, I was in the startup weekend. I was leading a team. I was celebrated for my achievements. People were like, that you're so good at this, and getting complimented because of the environment I was in. And that's what really built the self-confidence for me to now lead a company.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And was that, like, when you experienced that tall poppy syndrome at university, was that from your fellow students?
Yep.
Wow.
I even saw them, they were also my friends.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you got a particular story you can share?
It's not really a story. It's just like, you know, you're in groups, you're in teams, you're naturally a leader, but just because others don't see it that way, they'll try to bring you down, or because you are doing better than them, they bring you down. And you know, the least thing is you don't expect it from your friends.
Yeah.
But and it's not their fault, it's because the culture we're in, it's normalized to do that.
So
you know?
true.
Or like, I know, you know, something I really struggled with at uni was, I think I mentioned again, like, you know, there's a lot of hormonal things with females, you know, I didn't know what was going on. It was really hard for me to get out of bed. I'd really struggle. I used to get bullied for that, bullied for not coming to class, and bullied for not coming to lectures, even though my work was done. And so there's these little things that sound like, oh, not a big deal now, but back then those were huge, and those can really hit your self-confidence, your self-esteem, because these are the people who should be helping you, supporting you, pushing you up, literally pulling you down. And you're away from home, you're away from family, your friends from back home. So I think I was actually in a really dark place at uni. So I was really glad to move on from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you look after your mental health nowadays?
So, yeah, look, I probably don't do a great job of it right now, just because I'm all over the place. But a few things that I've integrated into my life is get a massage sometimes.
Nice.
That really helps me. You know, it's like the biggest spend.
It's good, eh? It's like a real treat for yourself, eh?
Yeah.
Always, I don't know, I don't really go get massages, but on the odd occasion I got like a voucher or something. Like you go and you're like, you actually feel so much better, eh? You just like feel so much more relaxed, and like you've done, it's very little you actually do something in your day to like treat yourself or look after yourself.
Exactly. I think for me, I don't know how you feel, but you're on the computer, my neck and back is just so sore.
I want to go to a chiropractor to get cracked. Eh?
Oh, true. Yeah.
I like watch those videos of them getting cracked online. I'm like, I need that.
Yeah. So that's me. I also just making sure I eat healthy as much as I can. Food, healthy. I want to get into more exercise. That's been a thing that I've kicked off.
Yep.
But I was talking to my boyfriend last night. We're like, we need to bring exercise back. Like it's just hard when you're traveling. I don't know how you do it, you know? But yeah, what else do I do? I definitely try and stay in touch with my friends. Like, you know, my core friends, I've got a core group now, and we're all, you know, I know who they are. I know they're celebrating me. They support who I am. Make sure I check in with them, because, you know, with things with friendships, as you get busy, it's a two-way street. You can't expect people to be there for you all the time if you're not going to be there for them. So I definitely make time to check in on them, and they do the same. And I think that really helps, just having someone I can call or message and, you know, have a chat when things aren't going well.
That's really nice, eh? It's it's so true. You kind of become older, you know, you're not necessarily hanging out with your friends all the time because you're not at school, you're not studying with them, you're probably not working with them.
No.
So it is a two-way street. Like, you've got to put so much effort into nurturing relationships with people, because there's been so many times, we're like such good friends, but if you don't reach out, sometimes it could take, you know, you might not talk to them for like 8 months, 6 months, and it's like, shit, you just got to put the effort in. That's, you know, that's really good to hear. I think those are really good steps for looking after your mental health. And I know there's a bad sort of track record with different founders around mental health struggles. So it's awesome to hear you on this platform, you know, talking about mental health. It's a big theme throughout the podcast.
Yes.
And something I'm really passionate about too.
You know, the one thing as well that I try and do when I can, this really helps, is going for a cold dip in the ocean. Like, honestly, that is amazing. Like, it's really helped me. So I mean, where there's a little. Speaking of the ocean.
I love it. We just had a bit of a water spill on cue with the ocean. Hey, it was bound to happen. It was probably poor placement from me.
Sorry about that.
But that is actually totally on cue for talking about water. So why is water such? And like a cold plunge, man, it goes wonders.
It's like a bit of a cool thing right now. Hot and cold baths and
Totally.
stuff. I mean, I don't afford an ice bath
Ice
thing,
bath,
but
yeah.
honestly, you go to Island Bay, you go out into the ocean, that's an ice bath.
It's
Okay,
free.
you go in there, it's freezing, and so I think it was like the 1st or 2nd of September. The sun was out. We're like, we have to,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I went in and I was screaming, I was swearing on the top of my lungs. People
Yeah.
were looking, but it helped.
It
like
does,
my
eh?
body just felt so good after that. So whenever there's a bit of sun out, we'll just be like, we'll toughen it up and
That's
just go
awesome.
for a 1 minute quick dip.
Yep.
And honestly, does wonders.
Totally. And you'll never regret it. Like you might be walking up to there, it's like there's a cold southerly going on. You're like, I really don't want to do this. But then when you hop into the water and you head back out, like you literally feel like a new person. Eh?
Yeah.
It's almost like a reset. There's these crazy ladies that I drive past when I'm coming back home from the gym. And I live like basically right on the beach there. And at like about 7 a.m. when I'm like coming back home, this is during like peak winter when it's still dark at 7 a.m. They're going for swims.
Oh my god.
There's like a group of like 4 and 5 of them. It's like raining and they're out there. I'm like, sure. I couldn't do that personally. But
one day, that's the goal, eh?
yeah,
Yeah.
rain or shine. You mentioned as well that there's been some challenges raising capital, like investment for the company. What does that process look like for, a startup when they're trying to get capital? Are you like pitching to different investors? Like what does that whole process look like?
Yeah. So I'm doing it myself. So like there's lots of different options. Sometimes people get people on board to help them, but I've done it on my own. And you just reach out to people. The best way to do it is find someone that can connect you because it just gives that a little bit more leverage.
Yeah.
I'm meeting people at events, conferences, just networking the shit out of it, man.
Yeah,
like
nice.
just a lot of networking and a lot of, hey, okay, if you're not able to invest in me, who can you connect me with that might be able to invest in me? So just a lot of doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And are you like, when you're sharing, like what sort of stuff do you have to share to investors as well? Do you have to share like finances, like sort of strategy, goals, aspirations?
Yeah. So I think with investors, it's like different stages. So the initial stage, you'll probably just have like a pitch deck and they'll outline your problem, your solution, your market, your product, your team. It's maybe a little bit about your forecasted revenue and what you're raising.
Yeah.
And then from there, you might have a more in-depth deck or like a information memorandum document. And then based on where they are in that stage, like every investor also works really differently. And that's something I'm trying to navigate. You might have like a DD room or a data room, which has all your information that they can go in and actually look into. But you need to have some sort of trust before you do that because that's literally your company details. So yeah, it just depends who you're talking to. A lot of times it's just a conversation, and they really like you and then they look at a little bit of stuff and that's it. And I've had a few investors like that. They just betted on us as founders and love our product and know like these guys are going to do well. So we're going to invest.
Is it like an election topic at the moment, like food technology? Like you'd be thinking that it's such an emerging market and you always hear the government like saying, we need to invest in new industries. So like, is there any political talk from either end of, the red or blue spectrum? It sounds like there should, if I was Prime Minister, it sounds like there should be like some like investment fund or something from the government to like, for companies to get like seed and capital investment to like scale. There is. It's
called New Zealand Growth Partners under NZGCP. There is. And I did have a chat with them. I think we're just a bit early. So they come in a little bit later and they help companies, especially when they export. So there is investment fund. I'm not sure if it's all government funding or how it works, not completely sure. But no, I don't think it is a political topic. If anything, they're all talking about how they're going to support farmers in the dairy and meat industry. Which, that's nice. But, what I think National's policy, and I again don't know all the details, but they have proposed something to do with GMO and changing how the current genetic modification policies look like. And that will potentially could support that precision fermentation that I was talking about because you need it's because of GMO that you're able to do that.
Yeah.
So potentially if there's some changes around our laws around GMO, we might be able to scale some of these technologies that people are working in New Zealand on. So
nice.
I think National's got a little bit of work in there. I met Judy. I was on Judy's podcast.
Is the
Judy
Crusher?
Collins. Yeah.
The Crusher has a podcast?
Yeah, she does on Innovation Nation on Facebook.
What?
So I think she's very supportive of innovation in food. And a lovely lady, I met her the other day. took a selfie.
That's cool. I think I saw that pop up actually
Yeah,
on,
did
your,
you?
on your socials. Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah. She loves that cauliflower ice cream idea. So I think she is very supportive of people innovating and moving
Cool.
away from traditional
Yeah.
animal agriculture, which is cool.
That's cool.
To see.
That's awesome. Keep those networks close.
Yeah.
Hey, before we wrap up, Millie, where can people stay in touch with you and your mahi?
So at EatKinda, EATKINDA, all the socials, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn. And then personally, you can always connect with me, Instagram, milli.kumar, milli.kumar, or on LinkedIn, it's my real name, Renali Kumar,
Nice.
MRINALI.
Awesome.
So yeah, LinkedIn, I'm actually pretty active. Feel free to touch base with me anytime. Happy to help.
Cool. Awesome. And we'll finish with some quick fire questions. And then we'll end with a quote. But
Cool.
we'll put the links in the description for where people can find out, either get in touch with you or check out your awesome cauliflower ice cream, which I'm also going to finish this little pot away.
I just want to mention, so we're launching Countdown next month.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
That's massive.
So 90 stores nationwide.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah.
I feel like we should have talked about that.
That's all good. I just remembered now as well.
That's so good. Oh man, congratulations. That's huge. The first, and that would be like the first supermarket retailer to jump on board.
Yep.
Awesome. The first of many.
Oh, well, Soupy also has it. So they'll be probably the first,
Yep.
but I guess nationwide Countdown.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Massive. Big things. Cool. Millie, what brings you true happiness?
Oh, playing with my dog. Oh, my parents' dog.
What kind of dog?
Chiku. It's a little Maltese Pomeranian.
Oh, nice.
And then my partner's family dog is a, what's it called? Kent Terrier. So just little doggos.
Nice.
Love it.
Advice you wish you knew about when you were younger?
It's really hard. Advice I knew I was younger. So as a kid, I was always told I was unorganized and I asked too many questions. And that's all bullshit because actually asking lots of questions and I'm actually very organized. So not wishing I didn't take that to heart when I was younger.
Nice.
Yeah.
What does legacy mean to you?
Just leaving the world a better place.
If you could change one thing in New Zealand, what would this be?
A reliance on animal agriculture.
What do you believe is the main thing that is holding back young people in New Zealand?
So that's a good one. I think just support and what do you call it? Resourcing to support ambition and dream. Yeah.
Love it. Cool. We'll finish off with a quote from Winston Churchill. Success is walking from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. Thank you, Millie.